Music, Quarter 1, Module 6, 7, and 8. Music of the Medieval Period, Baroque Period, and Renaissance Period. Performance and Evaluation. The Medieval Period. The medieval period is also known as the Middle Ages or Dark Ages. It started with the fall of the Roman Empire. During this time, the Christian Church influenced Europe's culture and political affairs. Secular music of the medieval period is the troubadour music. During the latter part of the medieval period, secular music, which was not bound by Catholic traditions, emerged. Most of these songs were performed across Europe by groups of musicians called troubadours. Characteristics of the troubadour music is usually monophonic, sometimes with improvised accompaniment, and tells about chivalry and courtly love. It originated in France and written in the French language. Famous composer of the medieval period. Adam de la Halle, from France, 1237 to 1288. Adam de la Halle was also known as Adam le Bousseau or Adam the Hunchback. He was the son of a well-known citizen of Arras, Henry de la Halle. He received his education at the Cistercian Abbey of Vaucelles, near Cambrai. Adam was destined for the church, but he eventually married. His patrons were Robert II, Count of Artois, and Charles of Anjou, brother of Louis IX. Adam was one of the oldest secular composers whose literary and musical works include chansons and poetic debates. He was a trouveur, poet, and musician whose literary and musical works include chansons and jeux-parties or poetic debates in the style of the trouveurs, polyphonic rondo, and motets in the style of early liturgical polyphony. His musical play, Jeux de Robin et de Marion, was considered the earliest surviving secular French play with music. His works include Le Jeux de Robin et de Marion and La Chanson de Roi de Sicile. Monophonic plainchant was named after Pope Gregory I, who made this the approved music of the Catholic Church. Pope Gregory's action made monophonic plainchants popular. Although it was originally transmitted orally, scholars agreed to put it in notation to assist dissemination of chants across Europe. Music of the Renaissance period. The term Renaissance comes from the word renaître, which means rebirth, revival, and rediscovery. The Renaissance period is a period of looking back to the golden age of Greece and Rome. The invention of printing in the 1400s paved the way for a wide distribution of Renaissance compositions. With the emergence of the bourgeois class, Renaissance music became popular as entertainment and activity for amateurs and the educated. Lute was the prominent instrument of the Renaissance era. The influence of the Roman Catholic Church started to decline as the new music genre arose. Though sacred music was still of great importance, secular music became more prominent in the Renaissance period. This era was also known as the Golden Age of a cappella choral music. Vocal music of the Renaissance period, Mass and Madrigal. Famous composers of the Renaissance period. Giovanni Pierlogio da Palestrina from Rome. Giovanni Pierlogio da Palestrina is said to be the greatest master of Roman Catholic Church music during the Renaissance period. Majority of his compositions are sacred music. He was committed to sacred music and has a keen interest in satisfying the desires of church leaders in the 16th century. Palestrina's Pope Marcellus Mass is held up as a perfect example of Counter-Reformation style. Kyrie as part of the first two sections of the Pope Marcellus Mass. His career reflects his commitment to the music of the Church. He received his early training and spent the majority of his career in various churches in Rome, including the Pope's Chapel. He was an organist and choir master at both the Sistine Chapel and at St. Peter's, which may have influenced his distinctively pure and restrained style in musical compositions. Palestrina also served as an organist in St. Agapito. His first book, Masses, became popular and was greatly appreciated by Pope Julius III. Palestrina has two sons, but lost them both during the plague epidemic that struck Rome in 1570s. He had planned to become a priest, but eventually changed his mind and married a wealthy widow. This improved his wealth and enabled him to pursue a musical career for the rest of his life. Thomas Merle, 1557 to 1602. Merle was born in Norwich, East England, the son of a brewer. He was a singer in the local cathedral from his boyhood, and he became master of choristers there in 1583. Thomas Merle was the most famous composer of secular music in his time. He was a singer in the local cathedral during his childhood and was believed to have studied music with William Byrd, an Elizabethan composer of sacred music. He received his bachelor's degree in Oxford and became an organist at St. Paul's in London. His works include Fire, Fire My Heart, Sing and Chant It, Fantasy, April is in My Mistress' Face, and It Was a Lover and His Lass. Music of the Baroque period. The word Baroque is derived from the Portuguese word barroco, which means pearl of irregular shape. Some of the great composers of this time were George Friedrich Handel, Johann Sebastian Bach, Claudio Monteverde, and Antonio Vivaldi. Music genres of Baroque music: concerto, concerto grosso, fugue, oratorio, and chorale. Famous composers of the Baroque period. Johann Sebastian Bach. He was born in Germany, March 21, 1685, and died July 28, 1750. Johann Sebastian Bach came from a family of musicians. He was taught to play violin by his father, who was then the town musician in Eisenach. He entered school at age 7, where he was taught religion and other subjects. He became orphaned at age 10. His brother, a church organist, provided for him. Bach's beautiful soprano singing voice helped him to be accepted at a school in Luxembourg. A few years later, his voice changed and Bach focused his attention to playing the violin and harpsichord. Bach was a religious man. His personal and deep faith is shown in his sacred music. He was known for his compositions for organ, orchestra, and oratorio. His most important and long-term position was as cantor at St. Thomas Church. His works include concerto grosso, masses, cantatas, fugues, and works for clavichord and harpsichord. Antonio Vivaldi from Venice, March 4, 1678 to Vienna, July 28, 1741. Antonio Lucio Vivaldi, or the Red Priest because of his red hair, was an Italian Baroque composer, Catholic priest, and a virtuoso violinist. Recognized as one of the greatest Baroque composers, his influence during his lifetime was widespread over Europe. Vivaldi is known mainly for composing instrumental concertos, especially for the violin, as well as sacred choral works and over 40 operas. He entered the priesthood and was ordained in 1703. Vivaldi is well known for giving the string a major role in his compositions. His most famous piece is The Four Seasons. This composition is a series of 4 violin concerto depicting each of the seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter.
Light, bright, and cheerful. It's some of the most familiar of all early 18th century music. It's been featured in uncounted films and television commercials. But what is it, and why does it sound that way? This is the opening of Spring from the Four Seasons by Italian composer Antonio Vivaldi. The Four Seasons are famous in part because they're a delight to the ear. However, even more notable is the fact that they have stories to tell. At the time of their publication in Amsterdam in 1725, they were accompanied by poems describing exactly what feature of that season Vivaldi intended to capture in musical terms. In providing specific plot content for instrumental music, Vivaldi was generations ahead of his time. If one were to read the poems simultaneously to hearing the music, one would find the poetic scenes synchronizing nicely with the musical imagery. We are told that the birds welcome spring with happy song, and here they are doing exactly that. Soon, however, a thunderstorm breaks out. Not only is there musical thunder and lightning, there are also more birds, wet, frightened, and unhappy. In summer, the turtle dove sings her name, Tortorella, in Italian, before a hailstorm flattens the fields. Autumn brings eager hunters dashing out in pursuit of their prey. The winter concerto begins with teeth chattering in the cold, before one takes refuge by a crackling fire. Then it's back out into the storm, where there'll be slips and falls on the ice. In these first weeks of winter, the old year is coming to a close, and so does Vivaldi's musical exploration of the seasons. Not until the early 19th century would such expressive instrumental program music, as it was known, become popular. By then, larger, more varied ensembles were the rule, with woodwinds, brass, and percussion to help tell the tale. But Vivaldi pulled it off with just one violin, strings, and a harpsichord. Unlike his contemporary Bach, Vivaldi wasn't much interested in complicated fugues. He preferred to offer readily accessible entertainment to his listeners, with melodies that pop back up later in a piece to remind us of where we've been. So the first movement of the Spring Concerto begins with a theme for spring, and ends with it too, slightly varied from when it was last heard. It was an inspired way to attract listeners, and Vivaldi, considered one of the most electrifying violinists of the early 18th century, understood the value of attracting audiences. Such concerts might feature himself as the star violinist. Others presented the young musicians of the Pietà, a Venetian girls' school, where Vivaldi was director of music. Most of the students were orphans. Music training was intended not only as social skills suitable for young ladies, but also as potential careers for those who might fail to make good marriages. Even in the composer's own time, Vivaldi's music served as diversion for all, not just for the wealthy aristocrats. 300 years later, it's an approach that still works, and Vivaldi's music still sounds like trotting horses on the move.
George Friedrich Handel, from Germany, February 23, 1685, London, April 14, 1759. George Handel was the second son from the second marriage of a pastor. Despite his father's opposition, George secretly taught himself to play the harpsichord. At age 7, he gained access to a church organ and started to play. A duke heard him play and insisted on giving him a formal music education. Under Seckau, organist of Halle Cathedral, he studied counterpoint, canon, and fugue. Handel is remembered for his operas and oratorios. Handel became England's favorite composer. He had given English audiences music that in variety and interest rivaled anything they could remember. Handel lost both of his eyesight in 1753. When he conducted his oratorio Samson, a few in the audience were unaware that he had lost his eyesight. The Messiah is Handel's most famous creation, and the very well-known Hallelujah chorus is part of Handel's Messiah. The Messiah was written in the space of 24 days in London, but it was in Dublin when the Messiah was first performed and became an instant success.